It's Tuesday, April 14. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. As of Tuesday morning, Jamaica has 73 confirmed COVID-19 cases. The Ministry of Health and Wellness says the latest case is a 57-year-old male from Kingston and St. Andrew with no travel history, but is a contact of a confirmed case. According to the ministry, there are now 31 imported cases. 34 cases are contacts of a confirmed case, 6 are local transmission cases, and 2 cases are under investigation. To date, a total of 1,199 samples have been tested, resulting in 1,121 negative and 73 positive, and 5 samples pending. Meanwhile, 3 more patients have recovered and have been released from hospitals. Curfews have become a regular aspect of life for Jamaicans in the past recent weeks as the country battles the spread of the dreaded COVID-19 virus. For the most part, the country spent the Easter holidays on lockdown, and while most Jamaicans were obedient to the stay-at-home orders, there are some who were found to be in breach. Marlon Samuels has that report.
April 14 marks 36 days since the first confirmed case of coronavirus COVID-19 in Jamaica. Up to the morning of April 14, the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 stood at 73. The government has been urging people to stay at home as one of the means of curbing the spread of COVID-19. The virus some describe as the invisible killer. They also put in a raft of measures, including the appointment of a COVID-19 response advisory team, the identification and contact tracing for all possible exposed persons, travel restrictions, closing of the country's borders, and the launch of a media campaign to educate people about the virus and how to stay safe. They have also retrofitted a number of wards at hospitals and the National Indoor Sports Center to house patients with the coronavirus COVID-19. Another measure was an extended island-wide curfew and a stay-at-home order to reduce the spread of the new coronavirus during the Easter break.
During the Easter weekend, the curfew will be from Friday the 10th of April 2020 through Monday the 13th of April 2020. The curfew will commence at 3 p.m. in the afternoon and end at 7 a.m. the next morning. In other words, the non-curfew hours, that is the period of time that you will be able to move about freely and conduct the essentials of life, would be from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily over the Easter weekend.
Prime Minister Holness also advised vulnerable people, including those with underlying health conditions and those over 70 years of age, to protect themselves from the virus by staying at home. The order went into effect on Friday, April 10. Despite the dire warning, some failed to comply and were caught by the long arm of the law. The price they paid was steep. Some were forced with having their cars towed. Others were directed to climb in the back of police vehicles, which transported them to the police station. There is mounting concern about the spread of the virus, despite the sterling efforts by the government. The health departments across the island are currently tracing approximately 379 close contacts of the 73 confirmed cases. For the news on PBCJ, I am Marlon Samuels.
A mobile testing unit has been deployed to the Cornpea settlement in Clarendon. Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says the unit will enhance testing capabilities not only in Cornpeas but also across the island. Dr. Tufton says the mobile unit has all the facilities of a lab, just that it's on wheels, so they can do a lot more testing. It can go to areas where the clinic or hospitals are not present. He says once individuals meet the requirements, then they will be tested. Up to Monday afternoon, Clarendon accounted for 15 of the 73 confirmed COVID-19 cases in Jamaica. The Jamaican government is reportedly considering protocols to permit the controlled re-entry of Jamaicans when possible, contingent on quarantine and isolation capacity, among other variables, pending the full reopening of the island's borders to passenger traffic. This was disclosed in a joint statement by Minister of National Security, Dr. Horace Chang, and Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Kamina Johnson-Smith. It comes on the heels of the request made on Thursday, April 2, to allow re-entry and landing of 43 Jamaican workers who were aboard the Marella Discovery 2. Carl Francis has more in this report.
The Marella Discovery 2 reportedly did not come into the Jamaican harbor on April 2, but was anchored at the California Bluffs, 12 miles south of Port Royal, for refueling. It's understood that the ship's agent made contact with the Port Authority and Port Health agents, advising of a request for 43 Jamaican crew members to be landed. The agent was reportedly advised that the ports were closed and that landing of the crew would require an exemption. The information was reportedly communicated to the captain. The health authorities made inquiries of temperature checks and any incidents of COVID-19 on the vessel, while making efforts to identify appropriate available quarantine facilities and resources to determine if it would be possible to recommend the exemption to the relevant minister and the cabinet. Information contained in the joint statement indicates that the ship's agent advised on April 3 that the request for repatriation was withdrawn and that the vessel was continuing on its route. It is surmised in the joint statement that the captain may have taken the decision not to wait for a process for which neither a guarantee of success nor a timeline could be given in light of the existing legal restrictions regarding the closure of Jamaica's borders. The Jamaican government is reportedly considering protocols to permit the controlled re-entry of Jamaicans when possible, contingent on quarantine and isolation capacity, among other variables, pending the full reopening of the island's borders to passenger traffic. Carol Francis for PBCJ News.
The 6 main Spanish hotel groups in Jamaica, namely Rio, Grand Palladium, Iberia Star, Secrets Resort, Grand Bahia and Malaya, recently made a joint contribution to Jamaica's COVID management recovery program. The funds will reportedly go to the purchase of ventilators and protective gear for health workers.
The amount will be of $200,000, and we already know that some of the companies are thinking of doing a special new donations. So maybe the figure, but I cannot promise you, will be increased in the future. So that's I think the beginning of this fight.
Thank you very much, Excellency. So that takes the contribution to date now to over 1.2 million US. I'm in consultation also with the Hendrickson Group, and I have their authority to indicate that they are putting together a package with the Ministry of Health, so that by the next press conference, we'll be able to give the exact detail of the level of contribution that they are making. This to us is very critical because the tourism industry is a critical part of the whole recovery program from COVID-19. We are impacted greatly by it, as you know, but we also must be a central part of the management and recovery activities.
The University of the West Indies, Mona, will resume classes in an online remote mode today, April 14. This follows a 1-month suspension of classes with a view to having 7 academic faculties prepare to facilitate the delivery of all courses through an online platform and to allow students to prepare to engage teaching and learning online. All forms of assessment, quizzes, coursework, final exams, etc. will also be facilitated online. Students will be advised by course lecturers or tutors how assessment will be done as soon as possible after teaching has commenced. Professor Dale Weber, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UWI Mona, says in a statement that the move is in keeping with the government guidelines on social distancing. Jamaican students were asked to move home from the halls of residence as well. And regional and international students, he added, though welcomed to remain, were encouraged to return home where possible. Prime Minister Andrew Holness took part in the Together We Stand Telethon on Sunday. The initiative was staged to raise substantial funds to purchase personal protective equipment and supplies for the island's frontline workers fighting the COVID-19 crisis. He made his own contribution of $3,000 to the cause.
The target is an ambitious target. Let's make no bones about that. $10 million in a difficult time like this is an ambitious target. But listen, whatever we raise, we are grateful for. And whatever you give, we are grateful for. Give it within your means. Give as much as you can give. Helping our doctors and nurses and our healthcare providers, our public health officers who are on the front line treating or doing the contact tracings, they need to have proper gears. They need to be properly outfitted so that they can have the confidence to execute their duties properly. So give as much as you can. I'm certain this won't go just for gears, but to assist generally in the fight against this epidemic.
I want to indicate that the funds that are raised will go into a dedicated fund, a registered charity, solely to purchase personal protective equipment for healthcare workers. It's not going into government coffers. It's going into a dedicated fund just for that purpose through a registered charity. And I just want to make that known.
Through this telethon, Jamaicans across the island and across the world were treated to an assortment of great Jamaican music for a cause, as some of Jamaica's best musical talents who came together in solidarity showed their support. The Prime Minister expressed gratitude to the participating artists, to members of his cabinet, and for those that supported the effort. 6 months of debt has been cancelled for 25 of the world's most impoverished countries so they can help tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. The International Monetary Fund approved the $500 million move on Monday. IMF Executive Director Kristalina Georgieva issued a statement saying the IMF Executive Board approved the immediate debt service relief for 19 African countries, including Afghanistan and a Caribbean country, Haiti, Nepal, Solomon Islands, Tajikistan, and Yemen. She says the money will come from the IMF's revamped Catastrophe Containment and Relief Trust, which will use recent pledges of $185 million from the United Kingdom and $100 million from Japan. She urged other donors to help replenish the trust's resources. And China has approved clinical test trials for 2 more experimental vaccines to combat the novel coronavirus. According to officials, the world's scientists are in a race to beat the pandemic. The vaccines use inactivated coronavirus pathogens, and their approvals pave the way for early-stage human trials. Wu Yaibin, an official from China's Ministry of Science and Technology, told a regular press briefing that China's State Food and Administration on Monday approved 1 vaccine developed by a Beijing-based unit of NASDAQ-listed Sinovac Biotech. Another vaccine being developed by the Wuhan Institute of Biological Products and the Wuhan Institute of Virology was approved on Sunday. We now join Gabriel Thompson for the business report.
In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index advanced by 1,584 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 80 stocks, of which 43 advanced, 25 declined, and 12 traded firm. The Junior Market Index advanced by 83 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for Access Financial Services, Barita Investments, and Blue Power Group Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica, 1834 Investments, and Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper, Siboney Group, and Derrimon Trading Company. Radio Jamaica Limited was the volume leader with 50.3 million units, followed by Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with 32.3 million units and Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares with 3.5 million units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Tuesday, April 7, ended trading at $137.39. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $98.62. The pound sterling traded for $170.07, and the euro ended trading at $149.85. Oil prices edged lower on Tuesday, with investors apparently unconvinced that record supply cuts could soon balance markets pummeled by the coronavirus pandemic, though a predicted plunge in U.S. shale output provided some support. Brent crude futures fell 8 cents to $31.66 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude fell 36 cents to $22.05 a barrel. And that's it for the business report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
In regional news, Bahamian Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis is urging doctors in private practice to join the fight against COVID-19. He made the announcement during an address to the nation Monday afternoon, where he also announced that his food shopping schedule will be enforced this week, that essential workers will be allowed to shop on Saturdays during lockdown.
The alphabetical shopping schedule will come back into effect on Monday, the 20th of April. Grocery stores will open from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. The time from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., Monday to Friday, will be reserved for seniors and persons with disability. Effective immediately. During the weekend lockdowns, grocery stores will be allowed to operate on Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for essential workers only. The schedule for essential workers is as follows. On Saturdays, from 6 a.m. to 12 noon, health professionals, police and defense force officers, employees of clearing banks, and employees of wholesale distributors will be allowed to shop. From 12 noon to 6 p.m., remaining essential workers, as identified in the emergency orders lockdown order, will have access to food stores. That includes essential workers of core utilities such as water, electricity and communications, the media, security company workers, Department of Correctional Facilities, Customs, Immigration, Social Services, Environmental Health Services, Waste Disposal and Sanitation workers, Fire Services, and NIB.
Minnis also announced that there will be increased COVID-19 testing, which he says will result in more confirmed cases. He urges fellow doctors to join the fight against COVID-19, recalling the AIDS epidemic of the late 80s and early 90s. He also expresses willingness to join the ranks of medical professionals fighting the virus.
We in the health profession, recognizing our oath, we were not afraid. We cared for the patients, but we took the necessary precautions. We protected ourselves and at the same time managed our patients. I was with you then, and if necessary, if I am needed, I will be with you again. After all, like you, I took the Hippocratic Oath.
The Ministry of Health confirming 2 additional cases of COVID-19. That brings the total number of confirmed cases to 49. The newly confirmed cases are a 40-year-old female of New Providence with no travel history. She remains in isolation at home. Case number 49 is a 50-year-old male of New Providence with no history of travel. This case has been hospitalized. Health officials continue to follow the condition of the other current COVID-19 positive cases. Investigations are ongoing.
And we go now to Barbados today for an update on the country's COVID-19 response.
Barbados is not yet in control of its fight against COVID-19, but it has not been overwhelmed by the virus. That's the candid assessment from COVID-19 czar Richard Carter as he addressed the island's handling of the situation in an interview on Monday.
If we had it under control, we would be having 0 cases. So as long as there is an active case in Barbados, we have to constantly remind ourselves that this is a live operation, it is a live response, and we have to be on our guard to meet the constant evolution of the epidemic. What I will say, however, is that it has not gotten beyond our capacity to manage. So it has not outstripped our resources, either our human resources or our physical resources. And that is important because that is what has happened in many countries of the world. The epidemic has gone ahead of the capacity to respond. So you have more people needing respirators than you have respirators. You have more people needing critical care beds than you have critical care beds. You have more people needing to be admitted into hospital than you have those. More people needing to be tested than you have the capacity for testing. We are not there, and I do give great tribute to the government in terms of its forward planning.
At the weekend, Prime Minister Mia Mottley extended a 24-hour curfew until May 3. Carter cautioned that there can be no easing of the measures to control the spread of the virus. He stressed that the public must not let its guard down and engage in risky behavior, warning this could lead to serious consequences.
Do that and run the risk of hundreds of deaths, potentially, of some of our most cherished citizens. Do that and see the spiraling. I believe this week it is up to over 60,000 deaths that have been attributed to COVID-19. Do that and face a situation where our way of life that has now become increasingly restricted those restrictions have to be prolonged, because as long as COVID-19 is around, we are not going to be able to relax and get back to the way of life that we wanted. So yes, there are those options available for people if they please, because you can't compel human behavior. You can, and the law is there, and you can bring people before the courts if they flout public health regulations, but there are very stark consequences. And the same social media that people rely on to do potentially destructive things, that social media is showing us, even in advance of our own deaths here, people that we know and love have died in New York, have died in the UK, and now have died here in Barbados.
Meanwhile, COVID-19 cases in Barbados increased by 1 on Monday, but 2 more patients have recovered. The latest update issued by the Ministry of Health said the new patient is an 84-year-old Barbadian woman who had contact with a known case who traveled abroad. This brings the number of cases to 72. The 2 recovered patients bring the number of recoveries to 13. 4 people in Barbados have died from COVID-19. There are now 55 people in isolation.
Some Caribbean countries have reportedly been struggling to receive scarce protective gear and equipment needed to combat COVID-19. The items procured have had problems leaving the ports in the United States of America. The problem has reportedly been experienced in Barbados, the Bahamas, and the Cayman Islands. All 3 islands reportedly had containers loaded with personal protective equipment blocked from entering their territories.
We have been doing bulk procurement on behalf of some of the member states. We have, on one hand, we have been working with a purchaser who was engaged by one of our global partners to try and ensure that we can get a better foothold in the market, both in terms of price and availability or access. That is in its early stages, and we're hoping we won't face those challenges ourselves. We're looking at different source areas for the items to ensure that we don't have the problems that we see emerging both on the Cayman case and the other case we have seen. We do recognize that within the region there are shortages. We have one funding partner was indicated to us to try to procure some of the items we are sourcing within the Caribbean based on the challenges that are being expressed nearer to the region. And even there, we're seeing shortages, and we're seeing that some of the items are delayed coming out of that particular port. So it's something that is emerging. I can't say I have a full handle on whether this is going to be a consistent challenge, but what we're doing certainly is working with other larger purchasing partners to try and ensure that we can ourselves navigate some of these challenges.
In sports, local-based Reggae Boys are expected to continue workouts at home despite the continued uncertainty over future matches and competitions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The athletes will be sent individual programs today, and a program manager for the Reggae Boys, Roy Simpson, made the disclosure during a virtual sports town hall meeting. The players will then be called into camp at the end of the month in groups of 8 with 2 trainers to test their physical condition. Over the past 4 weeks, CONCACAF has postponed the Champions League, Caribbean Club Championship, and the Women's Under-17 Championship. The 2022 World Cup qualifiers are slated to kick off on August 31 in the region, but with the spread of COVID-19, that date could be adjusted. And that's the news on PBCJ.